Namaste and welcome. I am Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are listening to my podcast Perspective. In this episode, I'll discuss the delivery of BrahMos missiles to the Philippines and the marked shift in India's participation in the global security framework. It is election time in India. Political parties are busy in hectic campaigning, ignoring sweltering heat. Foreign affairs and geopolitics are not part of the debate. This is partly logical, partly a hangover of the closed economy era, and partly a failure of the opposition politics to recognize national good. Sad but true, the opposition failed to recognize the global challenge posed by the pandemic. There was little reference to the post-pandemic unraveling of the world order and India's achievements in this turbulent period. Traditionally, the popular discourse on foreign policy in India was centered around Pakistan and the USA. This time, both are absent from the national debate, but for different reasons. India-Pakistan rivalry has its roots to the religion-based partition of India in 1947. The series of wars and terror attacks on India strengthened the perception of an enemy state. The sustained rise in India's economic and political clout over the last decade under Narendra Modi vis-a-vis the meltdown of Pakistan made Indians confident. The Balakot airstrike inside Pakistan, ignoring the nuclear deterrence, abrogation of Article 370 from Kashmir, and a parallel drop in terror attacks across India brought soothing effects. Indians learned to ignore Pakistan. Ideally, that should pave way for future cooperation between the two nations. However, the domestic politics of Pakistan may not agree to that. The anti-USA sentiments were a gift of the leftist socialist grip on policy making both before and after the economic liberalization in 1991. The highly favorable India-USA civil nuclear deal entered by the Manmohan Singh government in 2008, ignoring stiff opposition from the left, marked the first major deviation. Left paid a huge price for withdrawing support from the Manmohan Singh government. Today, they are relevant only to the state politics of Kerala. Left is reduced into a skeletal force in Tripura and in West Bengal, where they were in power for 34 years from 1977 to 2011, the left vote share reduced from 45% to 2%. Yesterday's ruler does not have a single seat in the Bengal Assembly. India-US relationships improved manifold under Modi. Both the Donald Trump and the incumbent Joe Biden administrations in the US contributed significantly to it. From a military logistics deal between the two nations in 2016 to India's mega commercial aircraft purchase order from Boeing, the US Congress's approval to GE Aerospace for producing fighter jet engines in India, MOU for semiconductor supply chain, relationship between the two nations became multidimensional. The US is a critical partner in the proposed India-Middle East Economic Corridor. India participated in the US-led Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and the four-nation Quad. Indo-Pacific is a priority to the US and India is playing a critical role on that front. At a recent podcast with me, India's former Foreign Secretary Sri Harshvardhan Shringla said that bilateral relationship is now above political changes in either nation. The link to that podcast is available in the details. The striking fact is, India chose the US as a strategic partner and maintained its policy neutrality as well. India's stance in favor of buying Russian crude, ignoring the US sanction, and the recent rebuttal to both Germany and the US for poking their nose in our internal affairs are classic examples. The diplomatic row with the US's closest ally, Canada, is another fitting example of India's independent foreign policy. The policy neutrality is also visible in India-China relations. India recognizes China's economic prowess. Delhi participates in forums like SCO and BRICS with China. But At the same time, India has deployed additional troops on the land border to stop China's salami slicing strategy. Politics and economics are complementary in nature. The neoliberal thoughts put economics in the driving seat. China focused on building its economic might between 1978 and 2008 before flexing political muscle. India failed to grow at the same rate as China in the past and maintained a low profile in the international politics. Such policies are ineffective in the post-pandemic era where the post-USSR unipolar world order is collapsing. In the changed circumstances, countries should be politically powerful to make economic gains and vice versa. Modi realized the potential and pushed India into a high-stakes game. This is clearly visible on the security front, where India has now started taking leadership roles. The Indian Navy deployed one ship in the Gulf of Aden as part of a multi-nation anti-piracy task force since October 2008. Shift came in December 2023 following a drone attack on a vessel carrying crude for an Indian refinery. Delhi immediately pressed 3 warships and allied assets into service in the international waters in the Western Arabian Sea. India's unilateral steps helped improve the security of international maritime traffic through the Gulf of Aden. This was parallel to Delhi's rapid expansion of naval capacity in the Indian Ocean. The Andaman and Lakshadweep Islands are witnessing a dramatic escalation in naval infrastructure and operations. The Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean are India's backyards. Whatever Delhi is doing now can be read as a delayed response to Chinese advances. But the South China Sea was an exclusive Chinese domain. Over the last decade, every country in the South China Sea reported violations of maritime borders by Beijing. The Philippines was an old US ally. Under former President Rodrigo Duterte, Manila nearly dumped the US for China. India was barely there till 2022 when it entered an agreement with the Philippines to sell medium-range supersonic BrahMos missiles. The very next year, in 2023, Delhi recognized the 2016 award of the UN Convention on the Law of Sea Tribunal in favor of Manila's claim over a disputed territory in the sea. Beijing refused to accept the international award and kept targeting Philippines' armed forces. BrahMos is produced by an Indo-Russia joint venture and can be launched from land, sea and air. The first batch of missiles are delivered in April 2024. Manila will deploy them to stop the Chinese. The tides have turned in the South China Sea. Last year, Manila announced exit from China's Belt and Road. President Biden recently established a trilateral axis with Japan and Philippines. Similar to the Chinese challenge in India's backyard, Beijing is now challenged in its own backyard. And India is playing a critical role in it. That's a paradigm shift in Indian strategy. Thank you for listening to Perspective. If you like this episode, please share and subscribe. See you next week. फिर मिलेंगे.